Drew McIntyre nearly goes the distance in the gauntlet match. Randy Orton is teased once again by The Fiend's return. And Lacey Evans announces she's pregnant. Let's get everything going right after this. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, like a little fantasy booking, news updates, and all-around talk of wrestling, the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast is for you. Dirty Mike and the Big Ugly discuss their thoughts on the current WWE booking, matches, and wrestlers. So we invite you guys to check out and listen to the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast. It's available on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Again, it's the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your number one source for the latest in WWE news and straightforward analysis. Are you ready to get this thing going?
Give me a hell yeah! I said give me a hell yeah!
Then let's get this show started right now.
Oh yes, everybody. Welcome to the Monday Night Raw review as we close in on Elimination Chamber and have the final Monday Night Raw to talk about before the Chamber this Sunday. Unbelievably, it's already this Sunday that we have another pay-per-view. It's a lot faster when we have 3 weeks between a pay-per-view rather than 6, isn't it? So this is going to be a fun show because it is the week of Elimination Chamber, and we've got, of course, a ton of audio coming this week. Another one of those exhausting weeks for yours truly when it comes to recording here. I'll be a lot of time sitting in front of my microphone and my MacBook here. But that's good for you guys, and it is a lot of fun, right? I mean, we've got the preview show coming up Saturday night. We've got our show immediately following the pay-per-view with the Botch Guys Sunday night, and then everything in between. The SmackDown review with Michael Ritter. We've got the NXT review with Zach Smith, which... While I'm at it, I want to let you guys know, Zach Smith, I made this announcement last time, but I want to do it again here. He does the NXT reviews, very, very good job at it, and I always get positive reviews regarding his analysis. He has his own podcast now, not under the WWE podcast. He's doing his own thing. Going to continue doing the NXT reviews here on the WWE podcast, but also doing exclusive shows only on his network under Random Wrestling. Search for the Random Wrestling Podcast, and it'll be popping up right there. It's now live on Apple, on Google, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, really everywhere that podcasts are available. You can check out Random Wrestling. Give it a go. I think you'll enjoy it. Again, you'll hear shows there that you do not hear on the WWE podcast. So one last thing, I want to give a shout out to our latest patrons on patreon.com and our latest patron, Christopher M. I won't give your last name just for privacy reasons, but Christopher M., thank you so much for your patronage, and I hope you enjoy the entire library, all of it, with no ads, nothing, just completely a streamlined experience. And I don't blame you for doing it, because sometimes those ads can get pesky, but it's also how us podcasters make a living. I mean, I understand that they aren't the best, but you can get around it for $1. $1 is all that you need to get into the podcasting ad-free world of this show on Patreon. You can download the Patreon app, by the way. You don't have to use your website. Nobody wants to use a browser to listen to a podcast. I get it, but they have an app. So, okay, let's dive into Monday Night Raw, guys. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. Monday Night Raw. I honestly thought it was a good show, and this may floor many of you, so make sure you're sitting down. If you have a seatbelt, strap in. Stow your luggage, and make sure your tray tables are in a locked position. I actually didn't mind The Miz's promo this week. It was tolerable. It almost made me believe him. It almost made me not want to change the channel, or in this case, since I have my iPhone watching it, it didn't make me want to watch TikTok instead of watching The Miz, okay? It was something that I have not seen from The Miz in many months to maybe years at this point. He can cut decent promos when he's not doing childish humor that he seems to be locked into with Morrison. And we open with Miz TV, and he has Drew McIntyre, of which, when you hear the one word that opens Raw of awesome, I let out a big sigh. A verbal, not like a fake internal sigh. I actually sighed at my iPhone and rolled my eyes, because you know what you're in for typically. I would love to know the percentage of Monday Night Raws that start out with Miz TV. It's got to be over 50%. Oh, I mean, even over the last 6 months. I mean, sample size probably 6 months. You're looking at 50% of Raws opening up with Miz TV. I would not be surprised. And no Morrison. It was nice to see just the Miz come out, and you know he's got his briefcase that I cannot wait until he gets rid of, and hopefully has a failed cash in. But Drew McIntyre is out there. And you know what the end result's going to be with most Miz TVs, is that Miz and Morrison, or just in this case, just the Miz, is going to be flat on his back, taking a bump as the babyface looks strong and they look like fools. And that's exactly what we got here. Except the difference was we got a Miz promo that actually was, again, somewhat decent. It's nice to see him take a serious tone. It's nice to see him without Morrison and realizing that, okay, yeah, he has a little something, even if the Miz is in some kind of cryogenic chamber that we can't see, in which he doesn't age at all. And maybe that's part of the Miz's problem too, beyond their personality, which I've dismantled more times than I can count on this show. The Miz, his look has been the exact same too. That doesn't help his case. I mean, same with Morrison. Who has aged a little bit, but Miz especially has found the fountain of youth somewhere, and he's not sharing it with the rest of us. That he looks like the guy from he looks like the guy from the real world still, for all intents and purposes. So maybe that's also a part of why he hasn't ever really shook that. And it's been how many years now? 15 years since he's been on the real world, and he still feels like that character. He still feels kind of like he's playing wrestler. So I think his look, given that it's been the exact same for how long, and that he is acting the exact same for how long, and has shown glimpses of greatness with his promos. You know, it happens every year to 2 years. You get something out of the Miz that's worth talking about, and you see these glimpses, and he is decent in the ring. He can be good to very good on the mic when he's not playing, sophomore in high school. So, again, I didn't hate this. And he mouthed off, and he interrupted Drew McIntyre, and he talked about himself with the briefcase, and that he removed himself from the Elimination Chamber, which I actually think makes sense, given that if he's planning on cashing in that night, that he wouldn't want to be involved in the chamber, because if he's involved in the chamber, then he might not, he'll be too beat up to possibly cash in and successfully cash in and win the championship. So, that is also something to keep in mind is, he said he's not going to tell us when he's going to do it, that he's thinking at a level above us, which, I mean, I don't know what that even means. I guess it's the old, you're playing checkers, I'm playing chess, I guess. But, it's nice that he removed himself, which I'm not sad about, and it is a heel thing to actually do when you think about it. But some people could say, oh, well, no, it's like he has two chances. Why would he do it? I actually agree with this. I actually agree that he should, because if you're a heel and you have the Money in the Bank briefcase and you realize that you're probably not going to win the Elimination Chamber, your odds of winning are probably not good, and you're going to be too beat up even if you survive or are eliminated. You're going to be too beat up to cash in at full strength and have your best chance of capturing the championship, that you just remove yourself completely, save your energy for when everyone else beats the holy hell out of one another, and that last man in the chamber has to deal with the Miz at the end cashing in. So that makes total sense that he would remove himself. So I don't have a whole lot to complain about with this segment. I mean, McIntyre warned him at the beginning, you interrupt me one more time and you're going to regret it. And the Miz did. And we get Samoa Joe, who needs to find a new phrase, please. I don't know why it's one of those quirks with me that overall, here's what I'll say. I'll balance out the good with the bad, because I want to not just complain about things. I want to give credit where it's due. Samoa Joe has made a transition into the commentary team smoother and quicker than I think anybody has in recent memory, in a way that doesn't make it feel egregiously bad or distracting. I hate to point out with Renee Young, okay, she was added, and I think we were all excited at first, and she wasn't a good fit. As great of an interviewer as she was, and really could have been an awesome manager, or even in ring if she ever wanted to, she just did not fit in the commentary team. She tried her best. It's not easy. I give her credit for trying, and she's the first female commentator, and I still think there will be one that will be full-time and great. Renee was just not that, and it's sometimes you think those skills can translate, and they don't. And Renee is just much better at what she does, which is interviews and sit-down interviews and her own podcast, whatever. So anyway, Renee Young was not great. Booker T was really painful and is still painful to listen to anytime he's on. His voice is raspy. I don't think he is an addition. I think he's a subtraction from the team. He just says wacky stuff when he was a part of the Raw team on a regular basis. We had JBL, who I think it was a very, very good transition. JBL was very good. Taz was very good. One of the best, actually. Taz might be the biggest success story from translating from pro wrestler, in-ring active pro wrestler to the announce booth. He may be the biggest success story of all time when it comes to that. You could argue maybe Jerry the King Lawler, so there's been some rough times. Even Byron Saxton at first was really, 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 really bad. And he's taken time, and it's gotten better. There are others along the way, too, I'm sure I'm missing. But I will say again, and this is a long way to say, that Samoa Joe, I think, has done a nice job quickly transitioning quicker and more effectively than I think most may have thought he could have. That doesn't mean I don't want to see him in the ring. I'd rather still see him in the ring. But here's the little, guess, backhanded compliment part of the whole thing. Can we have him stop saying, "Give me a kiss"? Please, every time that Drew McIntyre does the glass cow kiss, can we please, just, I don't know why or who told him that was a great thing to say. Maybe at first it was cute, but then he just latched onto it. And every single time Drew does it, he has to say it. It's his little thing. It's too cute for me. I don't know. It's one of those things that bother me that he's saying, give us a kiss. Can we just leave the moment where it is and, instead of saying something cute, say something a little more serious? I don't know. Just one little thing with Joe. Otherwise, I don't mind Samoa Joe on commentary. But I will say I wish he was back in the ring because, man, oh man, I really enjoyed his believability as a performer, especially when he faced Brock Lesnar at many moons ago. All right, anyway, back to the task at hand here. Miz is, won't stop running his mouth even after Drew lays him out with a headbutt, basically. And he says that John Morrison should be the one to take his place. And he goes and finds Adam Pearce, and he pleads his case to Adam Pearce. And Adam Pearce, who's done a nice job as of late. I said this on my last show on the Sunday Night Weekend Review, that I think he has toned it down. And Adam Pearce has been really like a nice, solid, foundational piece, a foundational management piece of the shows. I really don't mind Adam Pearce, and am I eating my words from when I initially saw him and talked about how I wanted to see someone knock his lights out, and he's a terrible babyface, and he'd be a great heel because he's just coming off as a D-bag? Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm eating my words, but that's what just evolution is, and improving yourself. And he's found himself, I think, a nice little niche role here, or niche. Isn't it actually niche versus niche? I always used to say niche, but niche sounds like, I don't know, to overuse my phrase, I've been using D-baggish, doesn't it? When you say niche, I don't know. I feel like a total tool. There's a better word. I feel like a tool saying that, but regardless. Adam Pearce was not convinced by the Miz's plead to have Morrison replace him. And then Adam Pearce runs into Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Oh boy. Okay. Kofi Kingston and Miz and Adam Pearce are all in this segment here. And Kofi pleads his case as to why we should have Kofi Mania 2. And the Miz is standing there, and Adam Pearce is also in the middle of this, and Adam Pearce is just kind of like, not listening to the Miz, but also makes a match with Kofi and Miz And if Kofi wins, he's in the chamber. If Miz wins, Morrison will be Miz's replacement. So let me say this. I have no problem with the logic of this. The logic, which I attack so many times on Raw and SmackDown and WWE in general. I have no problem with the logic of this. I actually think it makes sense that you would have two people that are fighting over who should be in a spot as a replacement fight it out, right? Settle things in the ring, as Kurt Angle said to ad nauseum when he was GM. We settle things in the ring. Oh God, I'm like trying to get myself to rant. I don't know why. Like my inner rant is like, let me come out. I'm trying to suppress him. Really, I'm trying. So Kofi Kingston again is trying to push Kofi Mania 2. Here's a clue. Kofi Mania was something organic. You can't have something organic happen pre-planned. It's nearly impossible. I was really, really not a fan of Kofi Kingston to begin with as WWE champion. Not because of his in-ring ability, not because he can't deliver on the mic. I actually praised him to the moon a couple of weeks ago about the actually Instagram/Twitter battle he's having with Mustafa Ali. And how last year, when Kofi Kingston was the replacement for Mustafa Ali, who was injured, that Mustafa Ali was angry about it, and they've had this really nice back and forth battle. And it was actually brought to me by our host who does the highs and lows of the weekend wrestling, Mimi Burris, and it's been brilliant. I mean, that is Kofi Kingston delivering promos to me. Like I think he's capable of it. He just is obnoxious and uninspiring and tired and just completely unlikable as part of the New Day. I think that it really, he embodies everything I dislike about the group. If I was going to pick one member, it's Kofi Kingston. I think Xavier and Big E, even though Big E I like on his own, were kind of the ones that felt a little more natural in those roles, where Kofi was just kind of the obnoxious goofball at times. But anyway, so Kofi Kingston trying to push for Kofi Mania. I'm not a fan of this. I don't believe he'll win, but I was not a fan of the Kofi Kingston title run. I thought it was silly that he never dropped his constant laughs and jokes and pancakes. And yeah, I lost to Brock Lesnar, but next week I'm out, throwing pancakes even after he lost. It was just absurd, and I actually think he did damage to the belt. And look, Kofi Kingston, talented, great dude, from what I hear. It just is not resonating with that silly New Day gimmick that just will not die. But he's in the chamber because he beat The Miz in a match that was good. I had no problem with the match. It is exactly what you'd expect. Two guys that have decades of experience between, as an aggregate in the ring. And Kofi Kingston wins, which is fine. The Miz doesn't get to put Morrison in the chamber, but I think that Kofi in there is interesting considering what happened last year at Elimination Chamber. But you're not going to be able to recreate it. I can tell you that right now. But hey, you they can certainly try with their fictitious pumped-in crowd noise. I'm sure they'll be able to try. All right, so what's next here on my list of things? Now, I did mention at the beginning of the show, I really enjoyed Monday Night Raw as a whole, and simply for the fact that it led to a nice gauntlet match at the end that kept my interest and was a lot of wrestling, which is, hey, what I watch wrestling shows for. Imagine that. But I got to get through some of the other garbage of Raw, and I think you guys know where I'm going to go with this. That is Charlotte Flair and Lacey Evans and Peyton Royce, who is really just a lost soul on Raw. I mean, before I get to Lacey Evans and Ric Flair and Charlotte, I got to say Peyton Royce is an absolute lost soul. There's no other way to describe her. She is here, there, everywhere. She, was broken up from the Iconics to then go into tag team purgatory to find a partner that she is rotating in and out every week. She has no voice also, which, she doesn't have promo. She extremely attractive woman, but that's, outside of that and being good in the ring, I would say she's average to good. She doesn't have a whole lot going for her. She's just kind of the the woman of many hats, where she just kind of is a babyface or is a heel, or they just kind of plug her wherever there's a hole, and wherever she's needed on the show, as part of a tag team, some anonymous tag team. And there's no direction for Peyton Royce. And it's really sad considering what Billie Kay is doing as a comedy act on SmackDown, but is catching fire, I think. I think the fans would be totally digging this if it was in person with Billie Kay on SmackDown and Peyton Royce, who, if you were going to split them up and you would say, at that moment, and you said, pick one that you think will be the most successful in singles, you would have said probably Peyton Royce. I felt that way too. And right now that's not panning out. All right, well, I'm going to take a quick break for the sponsor of the show. I'm going to need a breather because what I'm going to talk about next is the Lacey Evans, Ric Flair, Charlotte Flair debacle. And that's the most professional, PG way that I can describe this storyline. So buckle up. Things are going to get fun after the break. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, like a little fantasy booking, news updates, and all-around talk of wrestling, the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast is for you. Dirty Mike and the Big Ugly discuss their thoughts on the current WWE booking, matches, and wrestlers. So we invite you guys to check out and listen to the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast. It's available on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Again, it's the Dirty Ugly Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome back to the WWE Podcast. Let's get back to more great wrestling audio.
Okay, so hope you guys are ready. Hope you enjoyed that little quick break. I needed that to re-energize because what I'm about to talk about here is this Charlotte, Lacey Evans, Ric Flair storyline that, again, I have been really down on this from the beginning. I have been critical of it from many different reasons, not just from the fact that it's just preposterous, and honestly, I come from a who cares perspective, but it's starting to damage Charlotte, and this is where I don't want to say I'm drawing the line, because I already drew the line. I guess I'm emboldening the line. I'm making an underline. I'm italicizing it. How about all these these word references? I'm just really starting to get aggravated of the fact that they are taking Charlotte Flair and they are making her a controversial piece in a controversial storyline, where they are taking a woman that with so many credentials and has main evented WrestleMania. I'm still mad about it, but I can say it, and I guess that's the point, that you can say she was part of the first ever women's main event of WrestleMania. Okay, so congratulations, you got what you wanted, WWE. Although I still disagree with it. But she is one of the most celebrated, most talented women on the roster, and they're putting her right now in a storyline that is. She's being overshadowed by her dad, which is the opposite of what you want to do for any reason. There's no reason to do this. In something that is, again, you got to have Vince have some kind of edgy, scandalous story on Raw. You don't believe me? What was the last scandalous thing? What was it? Bobby Lashley and Lana, and then Liv Morgan was her lover, and it got complicated, and then Bobby Lashley divorced Lana. There's always got to be some scandalous thing, and Vince would say, well, there's got to be something for everybody. Well, who's this for everybody? I want to know who they are for these kinds of storylines in 2021. Please, introduce me to these people. I'm thinking that the people that Vince thinks are watching this, whatever age group or demographic are watching this, there's a massive shortage of those people. Whatever demo he thinks this attracts either doesn't exist or doesn't watch this part of the show. I don't understand it. It takes away from Charlotte. It gives spotlight to a guy that is a legend, an absolute legend in the business. And maybe that was the only thing that I did enjoy was seeing Rick actually, show a little bit of spunk and show that, doing his mannerisms and jumping around when Lacey announced she's pregnant. I mean, like that's the only thing that I kind of enjoyed. And Ric Flair, I'm not saying this is tarnishing his legacy, because for everything he's done, people are looking at this as just kind of like, crazy Rick. It's not tarnishing his legacy. Ric Flair is pretty much solidified and rock solid at this point, but it is killing Charlotte right now. It's hurting her, because why should she even care? If Lacey Evans is pregnant, assuming with Ric Flair's DNA inside of her, like, even at that point, who cares? Who cares? If I'm Charlotte, how many more times are we going to be distracted by Ric Flair's music, which thank God didn't happen this week? I mean, that's a step in the right direction, that Charlotte didn't get distracted by Ric Flair's music for the, I think we're on the 84th time? I lost track, something like that. That's a good thing. That's a sign. That's a step, and towards true north. But I'm at a loss for how this helps Charlotte in any way. Who is this elevating, by the way? Like, outside of Charlotte being damaged from this, being involved in this, and I'm sure she's just tired. Number one, if you asked Charlotte and you got Truth Serum and had her take it, I would very much venture to guess that Charlotte is annoyed at the fact that she's still sharing a screen with her dad in a storyline. That it should be about her right now. And she has separated herself very nicely from Rick. She has separated herself in a way that you don't look at her and go, oh, she's only here because of Rick. That's Ric Flair's daughter. No, you look at Charlotte and you feel like she's her own woman. You feel like she has created her own legacy at this point. She's in the middle of building it. And it feels like we've taken 10 steps back. If you were going to do something like this, you should have done this at the very beginning of Charlotte. Get it out of the way. Get it out of the way that, okay, I'm Ric Flair's daughter. Can we move on? And to me, this is like, 6 years too late. If you were going to do it at all, which I wouldn't. But for somebody that has the accomplishments that she does, this, again, I will go back to what I just said a couple of minutes ago. Who is this elevating outside of damaging Charlotte? But who's this bringing up? Who is this bringing up? Peyton Royce? No. Ric Flair? No. Lacey Evans? No. I would even say no to Lacey Evans. You know why? Because Lacey Evans doesn't need Ric Flair. And what's the payoff for it? Okay, she comes out of this as either a liar that she's not pregnant. You find out she's a liar. Or if she is truly pregnant and this is just a storyline to cover her actual pregnancy, that it's Rick's baby, okay, you go have your baby and come back. So how does this storyline elevate anybody? The answer is it doesn't. And the goal of every storyline that is ever created should be to elevate somebody, if not all talent. And in this case, it brings down all talent. All. Including the Raw Women's Champion by collateral damage. What do I mean by that? Well, Lacey Evans said that she's setting her sights on the Raw Women's Championship. Going to be kind of hard to do if she's actually pregnant. I got to look into that a little more. People are saying she is actually pregnant, but obviously it's not Ric Flair's. So we'll have to see. If you remember, back when Karma, then who became known as Awesome Kong, was in WWE, you remember she sat in the ring and cried and she was actually pregnant? And said she was pregnant and she actually was? Like, that was a thing. So I'm also wondering, they've done pregnancy stories in the past. And they've actually been true. They just covered it with something else. I would venture to think that it's not a Lita pregnancy. If those of you who know what I'm referencing with Kane and the miscarriage, good Lord. I mean, my God, can you imagine that in 2021? If you don't know what I'm talking about, it is, first of all, it can be a little bit triggering if you've gone through some kind of event with miscarriages or something. I mean, it's awful, obviously. But from even a storyline perspective, it's disturbing. I remember it. It's a little bit weird and a little unnerving to watch with the whole Kane and Lita and losing the baby. Good God Almighty, to quote Jim Ross. Careful if you watch that. But they've done storylines with this in the past with women being pregnant and things. And I mean, Mae Young giving birth to a hand. I'm going way off the rails here. But Lacey Evans could indeed be pregnant. Okay, if she is great, then she goes off and has a baby and comes back. I'm really, really down on this. But again, Asuka is being targeted by Lacey Evans. If somehow Lacey Evans is lying and she's targeting the Raw Women's Championship, okay, now we have Asuka get dragged into this nonsense. This is a cancer. I mean, This is a cancer of a storyline in WWE. And maybe you enjoy this. Hey, if you enjoy this, more power to you. That's great. I mean, maybe there is somebody out there that enjoys it. Maybe Vince does have that one fan out there waving the flag going, yay, and loves it. And that's great. If you do, I'm being for real, though. If you like this stuff, that's wonderful. I'm not being sarcastic. It's just not it's not for me. It's not my taste. I think it brings down Charlotte. And you know how it brings down Charlotte? Have you really thought about Charlotte Flair over the last month in a serious capacity? No, you haven't. Because every time you see her, you now associate her with this awful storyline that you know you're going to have to be dragged through until it comes to its conclusion. And we get back to the regularly scheduled programming with Charlotte Flair, which is winning championships, telling people to bow down to her, getting back to being a heel, hopefully, and ultimately, inevitably, facing Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania, which is hopefully where they're headed with that, because I don't see any other opponent for either woman at this point, outside of a monster return or a call-up from NXT. There's really nobody else. Again, maybe Rhea Ripley could actually make a full-time debut on the main roster, but maybe she sits in NXT for a while. Who knows? So, okay. I think I stayed relatively calm without yelling or cussing, so, props to me, I guess. Okay, let's continue on here with something else, other things that happen. And we got the Bad Bunny nonsense. I'll just get the other stuff out of the way. Bad Bunny is teamed with Damian Priest, because they're both Latino, I guess, so they both share that cultural connection. And we have Bad Bunny become 24/7 champion after, we got Akira Tozawa got, flattened, and we had Bad Bunny cover him for the championship. Now, I would normally tear this one a new one. I am very tired of seeing Bad Bunny already. I cannot emphasize enough that I understand how big he is in the music world. That means zero to me when you come to pro wrestling. As a fan, I don't care. Unless you're going to take this serious or take bumps and make the guys and gals here look like they should, and not that they get one-upped by a outsider who has not come into this world and you get one-upped by somebody who's going to leave the next day, then I'm fine with it. But that's not what we're going to get here. We're going to get Bad Bunny in an offensive role only, not taking any shots, likely. If he does, maybe he does at WrestleMania, who knows. But he wins the 24/7 championship from Akira Tozawa, again, in like a comedy spot. I have no problem with this, because the 24/7 title, it doesn't... and I'm being serious when I say this, that the championship that the 24/7 belt represents is seriously about as much as a replica belt that I purchase off WWE Shop.com. That's how much the belt means. And I'm not trying to be funny or comedic or anything. I'm being completely serious. That the 24/7 championship would probably mean more if I just purchase it off WWE Shop.com. And I start running around with it, and people can pin me for it, that kind of thing. I mean, when you have Peter Rosenberg win it, when you have former NFL players win it, when you have women, I think Maria Kanellis won it at one point, it's become a complete joke. And I know the WWE knows that they have got all the mileage out of it they could possibly get out of it, but they use it as a mainstay comedy attempt spot week after week. And I love R-Truth, and it is his baby. And R-Truth is, I think, one of the very few guys on the roster that are good at comedy. And that's fine. And they'll eventually do a documentary on the 24/7 championship, I'm sure. I'm sure they will eventually do a whole thing on it, on who won it, where, and they'll have this whole timeline. And, it'll be interesting to see as a whole of, when it was introduced, who won it, how many title runs, or how many times R-Truth has won it, which is like 80 sometimes or something silly. So this will go on and on and on and on, and we're just all going to have to live with the 24/7 title that is only won by a roll-up, like 90% of the time. It's a roll-up from behind. That is how you win the 24/7 championship. Okay, moving on to something else that actually matters. Shayna Baszler defeats Lana. And here, again, I'll be completely transparent with you guys. This was not a Hulu part of the show. So Hulu cut this out. So I'm reading the narrative. I already know what happened, and I did see some highlights, but I want to read it so I make sure I capture everything. This is WWE's recap, not a wrestling news website. So it says, every time Lana starts flying high, Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax show up swinging, knock her down. Tonight, it was the Queen of Spades that crushed and contorted the underdog from the opening bell. As Naomi and Jax brawled on the outside, an opening appeared for Lana, but Baszler had punishment teed up. The WWE Women's Tag Team Champion connected on a knee strike and locked in a Karafuda clutch to secure the win. Okay. So Lana gets twisted and contorted like a pretzel, and she loses the match. As Lana probably should at this stage. Perhaps they are building to another Shayna Baszler run, but she's also one half the Women's Tag Team Champion, so she's kind of tied up in that deal. And we have Nia Jax. At least she didn't do a failed leg drop attempt on the ring apron this week, so we don't have to worry about any of her orifices. There's a word for you I've never said on this show. We don't have to worry about any of those and her screaming about any of those issues. That's good. And again, I have no problem with Shayna Baszler being rebuilt. Is this a step? Maybe. I mean, again, it's 1 week. But all right. Let's continue on here. Again, that was not a part of the normal show. Okay, we got AJ Styles and Kofi Kingston starting this gauntlet match, and the stipulations for this gauntlet match that ran like 40 plus minutes of the show. I mean, it was like a third of Monday Night Raw, and that's not a complaint or a rant or a critique. I'm fine with wrestling taking up a large block of the show, as it should. And the winner of this gauntlet would have the advantage of coming in last in the Royal Rumble, in the Elimination Chamber match. So if you're a wrestling fan of 6 months or more, you probably had an inclination that a match like this is suited for a heel to win. Why would you have a babyface win that spot? You want them to scratch and claw and have no advantages and no excuses. And it's like the Money in the Bank match. Tailor-made for a heel to win. Royal Rumble is tailor-made for a babyface to win. There are just certain stipulations and scenarios of matches that just make sense for heels or babyfaces to win. And it's not to say that a babyface can't win or a heel can't win a babyface style match, but sometimes it just doesn't feel right. And to me, if Drew McIntyre had gone the distance here, I think it would have shown his tough and grit, but I think it would have actually taken away from the competitors in the match, because Drew McIntyre was able to run through 3 or 4 of them at that point if he had won. And he's, on one run, no breaks. That would have been a little bit unbelievable, and I think it was smart to have Drew lose and Sheamus win. But anyway, back to Kofi Kingston and AJ Styles that started this off. I mean, you knew what you're going to get here, and that's a solid wrestling match. No issues here. It was exactly what you'd expect, with not only AJ Styles winning, but a very high-quality match. So I have nothing there. And AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre, boy, that's a match I'd like to see. That, as I saw this, all the combinations that happened, to me, AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre, is a match that needs to happen again. And I don't mean it in their current formations. I mean it in a rebuilt AJ Styles scenario. And I've been calling for this for some time too. AJ Styles doesn't have a whole lot of years left. And they've added Omos, who has done something to keep his character interesting. But at the same time, they haven't done a big character transformation with AJ Styles to really add something different to his character, add another layer. They've kind of kept him stagnant for a while. So my point is, I would like to see AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre with a rebuilt AJ Styles, because when you look at these two, you knew off the bat in terms of the pecking order, the current pecking order, which always is the most important. The current pecking order would lend itself to Drew winning. And Drew did win, but they were really good together. I had no issues with these two locking up, and I'd like to see a longer program. There's the word. Longer program with these two in the future. I will say that. So Drew wins and then goes to Jeff Hardy. And, again, a good match. Jeff Hardy is hanging on to threads at this point with his career. He's got more mileage on his body than most of us probably have any idea. I mean, the amount of bumps and bruises and broken bones and everything else that this dude has endured over the last 20 years in wrestling, it's mind-boggling. And the fact that he's able to still do some of the things he does in the ring is a testament to him. It's crazy. So, but again, you knew Drew was going to win this too. Jeff Hardy has been on a massive losing streak, so it makes sense. Why he's even in this match to begin with is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just silly. But really to that point, before we continue with the gauntlet, why the hell, if there's an open spot for the Elimination Chamber match for an instant opportunity for the WWE Championship, is nobody else hunting down Adam Pearce, knocking down his door, kicking it down for an opportunity? Because it's only who comes up to him? He can't, create a battle royal or some kind of quick tournament or fatal 5-way to determine who's going to compete in that final spot. It was only Kofi Kingston and The Miz who had any kind of intelligence. And you could say, well, it's because they wanted former champions. Well, again, whose idea was that? Apparently it's not Adam Pearce, it was Shane, but Shane gave Adam Pearce credit. I don't know why we're caring about whose idea it was. You have Braun Strowman, who came up to Adam Pearce too in the show, and Braun Strowman was angry with Pearce, as he should be, considering that he's a former champion. But then Adam Pearce said, well, technically you're a former Universal Champion. I like the consistency. I'll give him that. I like the consistency. But I just don't know why they decided to not have more people on the show get angry with Pearce that there's an open spot and you're not allowing anybody else the opportunity or feel like anybody else cares that there's another spot. Because you could say, well, wait a minute. What if The Miz won and put Morrison in there? Morrison's not a former WWE champion. I think that blows that theory out of the water. So did Adam Pearce have a crystal ball? So this was crazy that this theory of only former champions was true, because he would have just said, sorry, Miz, Morrison is not a former WWE champion. Sorry. And we would have all moved on with our lives, and we could have had like a fatal 4-way, fatal 5-way, whatever. So I was just kind of a little bit confused and frustrated why nobody else, with this monumental opportunity to capture the WWE Championship in the Elimination Chamber, possibly carry it to WrestleMania, main event WrestleMania, nobody wanted to step up to the plate. Other than Kofi and Miz. It was weird. It was just weird. I'm kind of frustrated with that a little bit. But Jeff Hardy loses to McIntyre as the third part of this gauntlet match. And then Randy Orton comes out. And Randy Orton, it was interesting. At first I said, why the hell is Randy Orton taking his time? You would have figured Randy Orton would pop up from behind Drew, hit the RKO, and, good night the lights. But the problem is, this is not about Randy Orton and Drew. This was about Sheamus and Drew, and Sheamus did that exact thing that I thought Randy would do. And Randy Orton did allude to the fact that they have unfinished business. So that'll be fun whenever they get back to that. I'm kind of being sarcastic, because I feel like we saw Drew and Randy a lot. So hopefully they'll take a long pause. And Randy loses to Drew, though, in part 5 of this gauntlet match. Randy loses to Drew, but it's because of countout, with Alexa coming on all the screens and laughing. And Randy Orton is paying attention to the screens on the outside, and he gets counted out. Smart way to book this, because you don't want either Randy or Drew McIntyre taking the pinfall here. Both need to continue their, here comes the corporate buzzword, momentum. They do. They really do. And you're teasing The Fiend's return. And I've come to the conclusion with The Fiend that they are building to a Fiend-Orton WrestleMania match. because they've waited this long. It's been, 2 months since we've seen The Fiend at TLC? It's been about 2 months. And with that said, that would make me believe that this is not going to be a payoff at Fastlane. They're skipping Elimination Chamber. So you've got Fastlane. They're not going to have a 2.5 month build to this match end at Fastlane. They're going to build it to Mania. So it is going to be Randy Orton and it is going to be The Fiend at WrestleMania. I feel fairly confident about that. Of which I have mixed feelings because if The Fiend's coming back, number one, he has to look different. We all agree on that. But how is The Fiend going to lose? Is it really about pinning The Fiend 1, 2, 3? Because if you set him on fire and that doesn't make him go away, then what's an RKO going to do? It's not, it's just, again, you book yourselves into a corner when you go to the extreme. Because then when you go back, which you have to, you inevitably have to go back, then it's like, well, why are we doing this? How does Randy think that a chair shot to the back is going to be enough to put The Fiend down? So let's see how much no selling The Fiend does at WrestleMania with Randy Orton. Okay, but again, good booking. They leave the door open for Drew and Randy to finish, I don't know, whenever they don't have any other things going on for those two. They'll stick them back together. Okay, then we get to Sheamus, who does exactly what I thought Randy Orton was going to do and attacks Drew McIntyre from behind, and then Drew loses clean via the brogue kick by Sheamus, and Sheamus wins, putting him at the most advantageous spot, entering the chamber last. Makes sense. It put a little heat on Sheamus, who I think is, again, he's a solid heel. He doesn't blow me away. He does make me want to see somebody beat him up. That's the goal. Is he a money-drawing heel? I would say no. But he's a good foil for Drew. He's a nice foil for Drew McIntyre, who needs someone desperately to work with, because he can't run through Randy Orton again. Brock Lesnar's not here. Okay? You have very limited options. So turning Sheamus heel was a smart move, because it's, I don't want to say it's your only move, but it's pretty damn close to your only move. And we get Sheamus and Drew, and that program will continue through Fastlane, maybe end at Fastlane. I hope it ends at Fastlane. If it goes to WrestleMania, again, I will say this. You can't have a program that you've seen them fight back and forth for 2 months and then have the fans expect to be excited for the third match of the series at WrestleMania. WrestleMania is typically a parallel build for stars to only clash at WrestleMania. You don't want it to be the payoff of a third match unless it's a really, really heated special rivalry, of which I'm sorry, Sheamus and Drew is not. It's a decent story for sure. Decent story with all the friendship and everything else that they had. It's very well documented. How close they were, like brothers. They grew up. They trained together. There's a lot to draw from. But that's a Fastlane main event. I don't know if they truly envision Sheamus and Drew going all the way to WrestleMania. If it goes all the way to WrestleMania, I will be... that sounds disappointing. That doesn't sound WrestleMania worthy. It just doesn't. But it does make me want to see. So mission accomplished by WWE. They didn't put a smile on my face at the end, but that's what I loved. I loved they didn't make me smile at the end. They made me angry at Sheamus. They made me want to see Sheamus get his head kicked off by Drew. That is what the goal was, and that, I think, is what they accomplished. So I think this gauntlet match really was a savior for Raw, and it ended up being a good show because of the gauntlet match. For everything I just talked about with the negative and Bad Bunny, which I'll, every week it seems like I'm going to talk about him through WrestleMania, and then after WrestleMania he can go away, hopefully. And those of you that love Bad Bunny, that's wonderful. And look, if you like his music, that's fine. Music is a very subjective thing, as is a lot of things, and are a lot of things in life. But that doesn't mean I have to like him in pro wrestling. I'm looking at him from a pro wrestling perspective. On my pro wrestling show, I see an outsider come in, a foreigner, into my land, and I want to see somebody beat the holy hell out of him. I do. I think he's obnoxious on camera. I don't, it's just not my thing. He can be a good heel. Like when they tried to make Floyd Money Mayweather a babyface against Big Show, a lot of people turned on Floyd because he came off as like an obnoxious D-bag. Remember that? And Big Show was getting cheered at WrestleMania. And we're all supposed to cheer for Floyd, but yet, I think the same thing's going on here with Bad Bunny. Kind of the same dynamic. I don't know who he's going to face, if anybody, or just kind of show up, do a splash, and we're all supposed to go, yay! A celebrity did a wrestling move. Wonderful. I don't care. Sorry. I have no interest in Bad Bunny at all, unless it's on the receiving end of a stunner, a chair shot to the skull, or being thrown off the top of the Hell in a Cell. Then you have me interested. Boy, that's pretty morbid, huh? True, though. That's very true. That's how I feel about Bad Bunny. Good God. All right. Well, now that I've probably angered some of you that love Bad Bunny, and you're like, "What are you talking about? He's so great." Well, yeah, in the music world, I'm sure he is, but in a pro wrestling environment, get him the hell off my TV. Okay, how about that for a positive way to end the show? Guys, thank you again for joining us here. We have so much audio coming this week with it being a pay-per-view week of Elimination Chamber. Tomorrow we'll be back in a double dose of the show with your wrestling nostalgia and your mailbag. And you guys have been sending those pretty steadily this week as we build to Elimination Chamber. Go ahead and keep sending those at realwwepodcast@gmail.com or call us. Leave a voicemail. There is still a few voicemail slots available, and that is 518-942-0247. Go ahead and give us a call. You got 3 minutes, and then it'll cut you off, and I will be playing those tomorrow night. Again, check out the Random Wrestling Podcast by Zach Smith. I really recommend you do. He's just getting on his feet with his own show. He'll continue to do the shows here, but his podcast will continue to be exclusively for listeners on his show in Random Wrestling, with exclusive episode-only shows there, not here. So, alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for listening. As always, I'll talk to you next time.